Hello everyone, it is your lovely host the Gaming Weasel. Top 5 melee weapons in Warframe for Steel Path. These 5 weapons will dominate and absolutely shred acolytes, enemies, or basically anything that appears right in front of you inside of Steel Path. We're gonna be of course going to the, I guess, the least useful to the best useful in the game. Couple things that I want to say. First of all, Revenant Prime is our Warframe of choice. I will not be changing the Warframe even though you can. I'm just gonna be using him to keep the slate clean and also fair. The primer is gonna be the Epitaph. This is the build that I use, and of course I do have secondary encumber, which is gonna be even better. 2 elements, gas and magnetic as well, and keep in mind that conditioner overload does proc from the main IPSs as well. Now, the focus goal is going to be Madurai, even though Nerimon could be better because of power spike, but not a lot of people, want to fully set up for melee, so keep it Madurai just in case. And of course, the pet of choice is going to be a Smida Kavat because we're running for loot. Now, if you want more viral, the Panzer Volpophyla is definitely the pet for you. But that is mostly it. Hope you guys enjoy the top 5 list, and I'll see you, well, in the top 5 list. At number 5, of course, we have the Enedem. Yes, there was an incarnate weapon on this list sooner or later, and it's gonna be, well, sooner rather than later. Of course, this dagger is a weapon that can have a really high attack speed and a range of a Tonfus weapon. Now, of course, the main benefits of this weapon is, of course, slash damage, decent critical chance at 22% and multiplier of 2.0, and also the incarnate form, of course. Now, what does the incarnate form do? Once you reach 5x combo multiplier, you do a heavy attack and you activate the incarnate form. Basically, it will last for 90 seconds, give you an increased range of 3 meters, attack speed of 40%, and whilst you are aim gliding, you will do basically melee attack projectiles or launching projectiles that do radiation damage, of course scaled off mods. It has infinite punch through and a range of 24 meters, and finishers with this weapon will grant you incarnate resilience, increasing the damage reduction by 10% up to 4 stacks, of course being multiplicative as well. But mercy finishers with Perizons do not apply to this, so keep that in mind. This will basically stay, or I guess persist, throughout holstering, bleed out and disarm, but it won't if you die. And also it will grant you a 10% movement speed bonus while held either in melee mode or just quick melee. So firing your secondary and then basically quickly accessing your Enedem is not gonna remove that 10% bonus speed, of course, to your weapon. Now, how does the actual weapon work? Well, first of all, let's actually start off with the incarnate evolutions. Basically, the first one reaching the actual incarnate form and allowing you to access it, the second one giving you 25% attack speed, third one increases range of aerial melee attacks by 0.5 meters, then of course reach a 3x combo and attack with your heavy, and then you get your incarnate form, and then the last one, evolution 5, collecting 5 ammo grants you, of course, or I guess collecting ammo grants you 5 melee combo counter, which is very good considering we're not using Nerimon for this actual test. This weapon is really good. The attack, actually the aerial projectiles while you're aim gliding are not the best, to be honest with you. They can be pretty decent, but not the best thing in the world. Of course, the mod setup looks like this. A faction-specific mod would be incredibly good. I just want that extra attack speed. Of course, it's completely up to you. It's personally, my build. You can choose your own build and stuff like that. I personally play it like this, even though that the attack speed does increase by 40% with the incarnate mode. Try to keep it up, basically, and then the slash damage is gonna basically do its own thing. Honestly, this weapon does really good slash damage, and actually, most of the time, the slash procs are what's gonna kill the enemy, not the weapon itself. Of course, if you pair this weapon with Ash and of course covert lethality, it could be pretty goddamn good, but as I said, to make it even and make it fair, I basically paired every single one of these up with my Revenant, and that's basically it. Moving on to number 4. At number 4, we of course have the dual Keres Prime. Honestly, this weapon, in my opinion, is the best dual-handed sword in the game. Of course, the Namaskila Prime is incredibly good as well. There's just something pulling me towards this weapon and making me feel incredibly powerful with this weapon. It has basically the 3rd highest attack speed out of all of the melee weapons in the game, behind the Namaskala Prime, of course, and the Prisma Obex in the Thibodeau, but this weapon is incredibly good, with a critical chance of 32% and a multiplier of 2.6 times, primarily doing slash damage. This weapon shreds. Now, if you pair this weapon up with Korra or Korra Prime, it has a 20% heavy attack efficiency, but that's pretty cool, but we're not going to. Honestly, if you pair this weapon up with that Warframe, it makes it really fun. But first of all, you always need the stat stick with Korra, and I wouldn't prefer you use this. Even if you do not use it with the Korra, this weapon shreds through enemies. The attack speed is so juicy. The build is like this, of course. And honestly, the attack speed is incredibly good. If you put all 3 of the Gladiator mods, you're basically guaranteed red crits. After you reach around, I think it's 8 or 9 times combo multiplier, you're guaranteed to have red crits for days, because this weapon has a high base critical chance and also multiplier as well, and paired with those mods giving you even more increased critical chance, you're basically going to be red critting all day. Sadly, we're not going to be showing that build today, because this is sort of a mixture of both of those builds, and I personally love using this build much more. It seems to be doing more damage, at least in my opinion. Probably just maybe something that I'm just completely delusional about, but I'm 99% sure that I'm gaining more damage with this build. Nonetheless, this weapon shreds through enemies. The fast attack speed, as I said, high critical chance and also multiplier stats make it incredibly good at wiping out enemies. Also, the heavy attacks in it of themselves are not that bad at all. This is a great weapon to pick up. Of course, the dual the Nami Prime is also an amazing dual-handed sword weapon, and I do recommend you test out both of them, see which one you like more. It's just that when I want to just see a lot of red crits, I personally choose this weapon because I don't know why, I just love seeing red crits most of the time. But nonetheless, the dual Keres Prime, our number 4 weapon. Moving on to number 3. At number 3, we have the Kronen Prime. This is one of my favorite weapons, and I think one of my best ever, because I actually had to buy this weapon with Platinum purchase decisions in Warframe. I love this weapon to bits because of 2 reasons. It's high stats and especially high damage, well, decent enough damage, and the other one is Sovereign Outcast, the stance that this weapon uses. It is incredibly good, flows very well, and with the port where you basically throw this weapon like a miniature boomerang to slice every enemy in front of you is incredibly good, increasing the range and of course being more effective. Now, this weapon has the highest attack speed out of all the Tonfas weapons. Of course, that is tying with the Praetos. It has the second highest base damage, and it has the second highest status chance of all Tonfas weapons. Now, that might not mean much, and let's cover the stats themselves. Of course, 80% slash, which is oh so juicy. We have crit chance of 22 and crit multiplier of 2.0. Of course, you do gain 10% boost to bullet jump velocity when equipped. Of course, recommended that you use the melee mode to avoid the auto swap, but honestly, just like having a 10% boost to bullet jump is not really that good. Nonetheless, what is good is the actual mod setup to this weapon. Basically just increasing its attack speed, increasing its actual range, and just doing loads and loads of damage. I love this weapon. This weapon just slashes through enemies. The incredibly high attack speed and even the actual base attack speed is not that bad, but increasing it even more is so nice. It makes this weapon feel incredibly good. Now, it is actually quite, I guess, easy to use, as most of these weapons are, and it will easily destroy acolytes. Just one thing, I don't know if you maybe noticed it, but keep in mind that these Thorax units are pretty tough against melee weapons, so keep that in mind. So don't really, try to take it with a grain of salt, or I guess you could say it. So keep that in mind. But nonetheless, as I said, the base attack speed 1.17. Incredibly good, increasing it. Of course, if you don't have the prime mods, use the normal ones, and even increasing the range is really good. So if you possibly can, by any means necessary, get this weapon because it's going to be incredibly good, incredibly fun to use, one of the best acolyte killers in the game as well. So the Kronen Prime, incredibly good, and honestly worth definitely my 140 platinum that I spent a long time ago. But nonetheless, let's move on to number 2. At number 2, we have the Nikana Prime. Honestly, this is one of my favorite weapons in the game. This weapon is incredibly incredibly easy to use. The stances, I wouldn't say are the best movement-wise, at least in my opinion, but nonetheless, that aside, it has the highest critical chance and multiplier of all of the Nikanas. It has the second highest attack speed and also the status chance just behind the Ski and Jari, and incredibly good stats. 90% slash, 28% of course critical chance, 2.4 critical multiplier. The attack speed is incredibly good. As I said, the stance that I personally use, I don't really adore the moveset, but nonetheless it is really good. The weapon itself I'm using, as you can see on the build right now, Blind Justice, but as I said, you can switch it up if you don't like it. I personally, don't really like it, but it also just incredibly good at slashing and dashing through enemies, especially if you use the mod set correctly. You can really, or I guess the combo set correctly, you can do a lot of damage. When an Acolyte appears, or even a Thrax unit, this weapon is incredibly good for one reason and one reason only. Get up to 12x combo multiplier and then just do a heavy attack and basically it will disappear. Either it be an Acolyte, Thrax unit, or basically anything you come across inside a Steel Path. I do love this weapon a lot. It's really good. It really does incredible amounts of damage. I guess the Ski and Jari is a pretty decent weapon in and of itself. I'm not saying that. Of course, almost every single one of these weapons has at least one, I guess, counterpart that could be counted as, I guess, the alternative, but in my opinion, the Nikana Prime is incredibly good. This weapon is a weapon that I love running in Steel Path, mostly because the Glaive Prime gets incredibly boring, and of course, it gets too easy in the Warframe, even though the Nikana Prime is incredibly easy as well, but nonetheless, it is more fun in my opinion. But nonetheless, I'm guessing you guys already know what the number one weapon is going to be, so I guess let's move on to number one. And that number one, I think we were all expecting this is going to be, of course, the Glaive Prime. The Glaive Prime is one of those weapons that you can bring inside of Steel Path and basically take it till, I guess you can call it, endgame or high-level gameplay if you want to go endless runs. This weapon, with its slash procs, can basically decimate everything around it, even through walls. Now, of course, this is a glaive weapon, which means you're going to be mostly throwing it and not using it as, I guess, a special weapon. Basically, what you do is use or hold down your heavy attack button, which is by default your middle mouse key. You throw it, it goes, flies in the air, you press it one more time, and it's going to explode, dealing guaranteed impact and slashed, dealing blast damage as well, having, of course, no damage fall off, inflicting self-stagger, and it does not need direct line of sight, as I mentioned earlier. Now, with the mod setup that we have right here, it is going to be incredibly good. Basically, what you want to do is have really high heavy attack. So, killing blow is very important here, of course. Base damage, and base critical chance. We do not need combo with this weapon. Volatile quick return is incredibly good. Basically, -4 bounces, so you're basically never gonna bounce this weapon. 100% to your blast radius, increased of course, and plus 100% chance to explode on bounce, which, as I said, we don't have. So basically, it is going to be extremely good. I mean, it's gonna explode when it hits a wall, but nonetheless, you're mostly just gonna be aiming in the general direction of enemies, throwing it above their heads, making it explode, and the slash procs are gonna do the rest. Of course, as I said, combo is very good, so corrupt charges, that's why that's here, because of that extra combo build-up, basically not needing to build it every single time. You just basically throw it, it explodes, you build up combo, it comes back, and just rinse and repeat. Honestly, as I said, any enemy that comes across this weapon is pretty much dead as soon as you go into its line of sight, and as I said, even if it's not, it's still dead. Now, two other really good weapons are going to be the Serata and also the Zorus. Those two weapons are really good. For example, the Zorus is incredibly good against Corpus units as well, and Serata is pretty good against Corpus units and Infested as well, but almost everything is good against Infested. Nonetheless, that was my top 5 list. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys did, do leave a like, a comment, and do subscribe for more, and I will see you guys on the next one. This has been the Gaming Weasel, over and out.